The Muslim ruler debate. We uploaded a clip, like I said, which did quite well, on nationalism in Islam, whether nationalism has a place in Islam. And like I said, not really necessarily about Muslim rulers, but we did briefly touch on MBS, MBZ, the Abraham Accords, all of that stuff, which is more geopolitics than religion. So what I really wanted to discuss here is the actual debate, right? And the fact that it's even a debate is, it's quite displeasing. I'm not going to lie, because the Prophet's made this very clear, right? The Prophet ﷺ made it very clear to us that, rebellion is always a last resort. And rebellion can only be done when a leader is no longer a Muslim, right? He is a kuffar, or a kafir, should I say. And he does an act of kufr, which, takes him out of Islam, an act of kufr which is so massive that it takes him out of the fold of Islam. So the Prophet says this. The companions come up to the Prophet and they said to him, if we had a leader, if we had a ruler who is so unjust and who is so dishonorable and, takes our money off us and delays our prayers and all of this, should we obey? Should we, can we rebel? And the Prophet says, no, as long as the ruler prays, right? That's what the Prophet says. And I'm going to get into why this is the case in a few minutes, inshallah. But there's another narration, right? Where the companions come up to the Prophet and they said the same thing. And the Prophet said, there are 4 conditions when you can rebel, right? When you can overthrow. And they are, if you, 1, see, 2, blatant, 3, kufr, which is disbelief, of course, and then 4, right, with strong and ample evidence. So those are the 4 conditions. And if those 4 conditions are met, which is very rarely, then that would be then permissible to overthrow and rebel, right? And like we said last episode, right? The Prophet also says that even if you have a leader where he whips your back, he steals your money, you obey, right? Because the reality here is that it is better to have an unjust ruler. Sorry, the Salaf says, it is better to have an unjust ruler for 70 years than to go a day without a ruler, right? For 70 years, think about that. Than to only go a day, 24 hours without a ruler. So this is quite clear, actually. The stance, the Islamic stance, what the Prophet ﷺ says, this is not mine or your opinion. This is the Prophet's opinion, right? This is the opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as far as I am aware. But we have a lot of comments in the comment section, people even going to, some people being a bit more moderate and saying, I criticize certain policies, such and such. But some people even going to extents like, takfiring some of these Muslim rulers without, like I said, without strong and ample evidence, okay? What is this going to create? Like the Salaf say, going 70 years with an unjust rule is better than going a day without a ruler. And the reason for that is because going a day without a ruler, we all have our whims and desires. We all have our own definition of what's right and how governance should work and how we should rule. I mean, nobody probably thinks that more than myself, because, the reality is that Muslims as a whole, especially the South Asian diaspora here in the UK, love politics. They love to criticize, they love to scrutinize, they love to do all of this, which is completely fine. There's no problem in that whatsoever. But for as much as we may do it for the West and what's going on here, then we turn our attention to leaders, our own Muslim rulers, and it just becomes, it is really a difficult one, right? Because, I know we all may have our opinions on what's going on, but the reality is the best thing to do here is to just keep it to ourselves, right? The scholars strictly are told, not us, not laymen, the scholars are told to inform and to guide and to tell the rulers what is what and what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing, right? It is on them. It's not on us. So even if you may think the scholars aren't doing that, or the scholars have been bought and paid for, or the scholars are too scared to do that, even if that's the case, that's on them, right? And even if you may think that the rulers are, so unjust and doing so much wrong, which, may be the case, that they're going to be held accountable for that, right? They're going to be held accountable for that. Just like we're going to be held accountable for our actions, and just like the scholars are going to be held accountable for whether they did or whether they didn't inform the leaders, okay? So why are we here all, saying so-and-so, saying this is right and this is wrong? It just leads to more and more division, fitna, temptation within others to also do the same, right? So turn our attention to other things, if we love to speak about politics so much, which is fine, like I said, nobody will understand that more than me, then turn our attention to other things, right? But the best thing to do here is to, for the sake of the religion, for the sake of unity across the Muslim world, right? We may not have leaders of the past or so-and-so, or you may not think that they are up to scratch or they're subpar or whatever you want to call it. We have leaders for a reason, right? Because if we didn't have leaders, what would we have, right? What would we have? Look what happened in Libya. Look what happened in Tunisia. Look what happened during the Arab Spring, Sudan, Palestine now, which is not all at the fault of Palestine, of course, it's the fault of Israel. But war zones all across the Muslim world, right? Iran is no bigger example of this than Iran. There's no bigger example of this than Iran, right? So all of these different countries, and yes, not all blame is on the countries. There's a lot of blame that goes on, just like I said last week, that goes on the United States, definitely. But the reality here is that, do we want that? Do we want that to continue happening, right? Just rebellion after rebellion after rebellion. Look at Egypt, right? I mean, that's literally what happened there. Overthrowment after overthrowment after overthrowment. It is not the way of the Salaf. It is not the way of the companions. It is not the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And therefore, don't disagree with me, right? This is not mine and your opinion, okay? So we may have our own whims, we may have our own desires, but the best thing to do is to be as to just be on the straight path, inshallah. So may Allah make that for all of us.